Well, welcome to the Kidney Trail Talk Show. It's definitely a new day, and I am in the middle of getting things started and getting things set up. We'll run just a little bit behind schedule, but that's okay. Things happen, right? Things happen in the live stream world, and that's exactly what happens. It is a definitely a new day. I wouldn't even say a new day. It's definitely some changes that's come to KT and some of the things that we're doing. And let me take that caption off. I thought I took it off, but it's definitely some new things going on, some really wonderful things that we're really excited about. And I am ever grateful for the opportunity and to just be here. And isn't it interesting to be grateful during this time, especially November? I think with Thanksgiving just a few days, short days away, something definitely, I think it's what they say, an attitude of gratitude, I think is what they say. So, we're just grateful to be here. And also November is also there's also it's a special month and something I just found out recently, and it is National Adoption Month. But those of us that have been adopted like to say National Adoptee Month, meaning we're celebrating the opportunity to be adopted in some ways and manners and forms. And I'm grateful for the opportunity. So, because of that, I'm here and I'm really, really excited about that. So we're just here getting all set up, getting everything together, and we have a special guest tonight too. That's the other exciting part is with the Kidney Trail Talk Show. One of the things is that I really felt constricted with the Kidney Trail's fireside chat was it's like a Friday night fireside chat, and not all the time can this happen on Friday night. Sometimes it happens. It may happen on a Thursday, middle of the day, morning. I've done it all sorts. So that's one of the reasons we thought about the change. And then the other thing is I wanted to bring in a few more guests to kind of talk. Hopefully in the future, we'll be able to bring into where you're able to call in and to be able to ask questions of our guest. And the same thing today is if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat. Stop by, say hello, support the guest, support who's here, support the show. We'd appreciate that. Follow us up on our YouTube channel to see all the other live streams that we've had in the past as well. And we're also all over the other social media networks. So, well, what we're going to do right now is we are going to bring in our guest, and I'm really excited to bring her in. Met her, I would say, let's see. This whole thing started probably back in December of last year. And it started when I had I posted a post about my adoption date, which is December 19th. And I stated how grateful I was. And next thing I know, Ben Fossen reached out to me and said, "Hey, I liked your post. Let's connect," which we did. He said, I'm from Guatemala too. I'm adopted. And I also run this group, adoptees with Guatemalan roots, and maybe something you may be interested in. So I was like, hey, definitely always interested to get to know other people from Guatemala. And so what ended up happening, we got to talking, and then he invited me out to the meeting, which was happening in, I think it was in March or May. I can't remember the month. But I ended up going up because it was just a few hours away from me, and went up there, met a bunch of wonderful other adoptees. And so from there, we met other people that had different stories, different backgrounds, different things they're doing. And throughout that whole meeting, really enjoyed it, had a great time. But I did meet somebody else as well, which he had introduced me, and we're going to bring her on. And so what I found very interesting about our guest is that she's adopted from Guatemala as well, but she has a mission to not only help others around, but others in the Latino community to help. So I'd like to go ahead and bring her without further ado. Let's bring in our guest. I think that's Consuelo. I may have that right. I hope I do. Otherwise known as Coney Lockhart. Coney, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I am glad you're here. I hope I said your name right at first.
It's Consuelo.
Consuelo, see there, I messed it up.
It's okay. No one never gets it right.
And nothing like doing that right in the middle of a live stream, right? When we have people all around the world watching what we're doing and doing this and that, right?
Yeah, it's okay.
So it's good. Thanks for coming on, and I appreciate you being a guest on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that I'm able to finally do this with you. So,
Yeah, we talked about this. What was it? A couple months ago or something like that.
yeah, yeah,
So, so if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
yeah. I was born in Guatemala, and I was adopted when I was 3 years old. And my American family, um, I first moved to Cincinnati, Ohio, and then a couple years later, they adopted another little girl from Guatemala. And then we moved up to Traverse City. So I really was raised in northern Michigan. So
Oh, that's wonderful. Sorry about that. We had a little
that's
bit
okay.
of a thing here, but so sounds like it definitely interesting, definitely interesting start.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
you and I being adopted from Guatemala, there's always an interesting start. So you were adopted, and I'm looking over this. So you were adopted at age of 3 and raised in Traverse City, Michigan.
Hmm.
So with me, I was adopted at 5 months old. Or was it? Were you aware of what was going on at that time?
Honestly, I wasn't. So when I was being put up for adoption, and when I was in high school, my adopted mom was able to try to help locate where my birth family was, and so we were actually able to get in touch with my biological family, and was able to connect with my mom. And so we went back to Guatemala when I was a junior in high school, and I had always really wanted to go back. I couldn't remember anything really because my adoption was actually really traumatic. So there are a lot of things that I'm sure I suppressed. But I never really got the answers of why I was put up. I just knew I came from a big family and that I just happened to be one. Um, and so when we went to go visit, that's when, I was able to ask my biological mom, why was I put up? And so she went through this whole story about how, when she was trying to put me up for adoption, she took me to the agency, changed her mind, took me back, changed her mind, and she did that several times, all the way up until the point where she knew that she couldn't keep me any longer. That she wanted me to have at least a better chance at a life and being able to live. At the time, my younger brother, so there was 8 of us, so my younger brother, and I was 7th, had gotten sick, and shortly after I was adopted, he actually passed away from dysentery. So,
Hmm.
we lived out in the, like, rural area, in Guatemala, so it's not like there was a lot of, nutrition or medical help and all of that. So, obviously, I've had a better chance at life now. So
Well, yes, definitely. And I mean, I think every one of it, that's one thing, I don't want to go into all the details of what went on at the meeting, all the different stories, but, when we're talking about, we both definitely had different stories. You were adopted a little older. I was adopted at 5 months, which I don't really remember much about it. I just wanted food and a place to sleep, and that's pretty much it. So,
yeah.
and didn't really recognize that until probably age 12 or 13, that there was a little difference there, but I still really didn't pay no mind to it.
Hmm.
Now, with this, you came over, you got adopted, brought over here. Did your adoptive parents? I don't know if you want me to say adoptive parents or parents. I know for me, I say parents, so it's up to you on how you want to say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Did-
it's hard because I know when I refer to my parents, I refer to my parents here. But then I have two moms. I never really, to be honest, I never really acknowledged my biological father. But I know, for just to keep stories kind of clear, I'll say my adopted parents. So
okay,
yeah.
that's fair. I'll go with that for now. So how supportive were they when you started getting older? You go into school, high school,
Hmm.
and then it looks like, from what I see, you pursued a degree.
Hmm.
Looking at it, looks like a degree in Kendall College of Art and Design. How
Hmm.
supportive were they of that?
So for me, I I was really, really quiet and shy and very timid. Um, and so when I was growing up, the only way that I really felt comfort or I felt like I could express myself was through drawing. So ever since I came to the States, I would constantly be drawing. So then when my parents put me into kindergarten and just basically throughout my entire school life, I was always in art classes. That's where I felt the most comfortable, and I felt like I could express like either thoughts or feelings, or even find ways of like connecting with my Guatemalan roots, even if I wasn't growing up in it necessarily. So my parents always knew that I was really basically longing to go back and fill this void that I always felt like I had. Like I never really saw myself as being different until I had a couple. I think a couple of things that happened when I was in elementary school, where I think it was kind of like a very harsh reality that I am not like everybody else. Traverse City's not diverse, and so I was one of very few Latino students in my school all growing up, and so I knew I stuck out. And so I think the way that it happened, I think from then on, I was always like, well, I'm not the same. So I always felt like I never fit in. I guess basically I was too brown to be white and too white to be brown. So I never knew where I fit, basically. But yeah, so my parents were really supportive. I was actually really surprised that my adopted mom even pursued trying to figure out how I could be reconnected with my biological family. I don't really like, I couldn't imagine having to be a mom and trying to do that for your child and everything. So,
Yeah, I'm sure it's a different, definitely a different process, especially, versus a birth, one that you had naturally and the one that adopted. In my case, I haven't really found too much difference in that. Yeah, and you're right. There is that I don't know what would I say, something that there's a difference.
mhm.
When you walk out and you're like, okay, and sometimes it can be a little awkward.
Yeah.
And until I actually started having fun with it.
Mhm.
I said I was baked perfect and stuff like that. Just really, just kind of easing into it, and just kind of having a good time with it. But sometimes it can feel a little strange, which
Yeah.
it's okay, uh, because eventually, hopefully, it'll go away. And I get that. There was a show not too long ago that somebody was saying that they said they were too brown to be white and too white to be brown, and didn't know where they fit. And
Mhm.
that's for some of us it is true, that where do we fit. Sometimes when we walk into a more Hispanic area, we fit in, and at least I fit in until I start opening my mouth, and then they realize that he's
Same.
from
Yeah, exactly.
or go
Same.
to a Mexican restaurant and they start talking to me. I'm like, what'd you just say? Like,
Yeah.
no clue, man. No clue. So that's wonderful that they're supportive
Mhm.
in what you wanted to do, and you pursued that degree in art.
Mhm.
And so, with that degree, what did you do with, or what are you doing with it?
Mhm.
First of all, and then the follow up question of that is not only what are you doing with it, but how are you in bettering others and creating that positive impact?
Mhm. Yeah, so growing up, I always wanted to be basically an illustrator. That was like where my head was set. But then when I got to college, I started seeing all the other programs that were starting to be off or that were offered at that school at Kendall. And so, I was like, well, maybe I want to do industrial design. So I ended up focusing on industrial design. I love the idea of being able to design products that get used every day. But then I found out pretty quickly that it wasn't a good fit for me. I actually had a professor. So industrial design is a male dominated field. So the only woman professor in the industrial design program basically told me that I was in the wrong program. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna like fight to stay here when it doesn't seem like I'm welcomed anyways. So I ended up thinking, well, what else could I do? Because when I was growing up, it was basically it was very there's so much focus on going to a 4-year college and like, education. And so art wasn't like, not necessarily like a huge push for people. And I never even knew anything about skilled trades. So like I think my exposure to what kind of degrees or career paths I could follow was limited. And so, that really made me start thinking about what is it that I like to do? What would be something that I might want to do? And so I started thinking 3D, like maybe I'd like to do something 3D. And I started exploring a couple other programs, and I ended up landing on functional art. And so once I learned a little bit more about that, I love the idea of building furniture with intention and concept. And so for me, I was like, "Ooh, that might be a great way for me to um, include my Guatemalan heritage, include my love for the textiles, colors, patterns that you see in Guatemalan weavings and stuff like that, and see how I can incorporate all of that into like actual functional furniture pieces." And so I completed that program, but when I was going through it, I actually was able to learn how to weld for a project. And so before that, I never knew anything about welding. I didn't know any welders. It had never been an option for me. I never had anybody like encourage me to do it or say, "Oh, maybe that's something you want to do," because I had only been doing woodworking. So to me, that was like all I really knew, other than drawing. And so I ended up doing the project. I really loved it. I was like, I don't know what what I would do with this skill once I learned it. Um, so after I graduated, then came the big question, like, okay, so now what do I do? And so I ended up applying for a grant and was able to go back to school under this grant for welding and fabricating. And so I decided, what, maybe that's a skill and a field that I could possibly work on my art and maybe grow somewhere else. I don't really know. And so as I was going through school, um, I started noticing, well, I'm the only woman, and I'm the only Latina. So I guess once again, I'm in a space where I'm now once again the minority. And so as I started going through that, I went through a lot of personal challenges with it because I'm like, I didn't feel like I was able to do it. I was in the class with all men, and I'm like, they seem to be grasping it so naturally, and I'm like struggling to like understand what I'm doing. Um, but then it kind of clicked because I kept thinking of different ways throughout my entire life. How can I get back to Guatemala? Is there work or something I could do that would make my biological family proud, that might do something to make an impact in the economy or do something that helps women in some way? Because I had seen what all the women in my family were going through. So I'm like, I'm the only woman with a degree and probably the highest education in my family. So it's just like I wanted to do something that would be meaningful. Um, and so it just clicked. Well, maybe welding is the way that I do that. Maybe I start a women's welding school in Guatemala. Um, and then I was like, yeah, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that here, let alone do it in a different country. And so that's really just kind of where um, I was using my art degree in some ways, because I'm thinking like, if I'm starting a business, then I need to start thinking about like branding and marketing, and I love designing, so all that stuff seemed really appealing. And then in 2017, uh, I was able to get our nonprofit, um, the entity filed, and basically just had to learn as I went because I don't have a business degree. I never had done any work with nonprofits. And so I'm like, well, I'm now on a new journey. So,
Starting a business or and even a nonprofit, and that's the one thing. It's an entrepreneurial journey.
yeah.
Whether you're in a business for a profit business or nonprofit, it's still an
Hmm.
entrepreneurial spirit, or what would I call attitude that you have to have would be probably the better term, no
Hmm.
matter what you're doing,
Yeah.
and to take that all that stuff that you've learned, you went through this journey, and it's not always you weren't in the majority, right? You were in the minority, which I
Mhm.
think there's sometimes, I think throughout life, there's times that, especially when we're supposed to do something with life, we find out that we're probably one of the few, we're in that minority. But generally, if we're in the minority, we really don't have, we're challenging ourselves so much that everybody else out there won't challenge themselves as much as they do. So we end up moving further than eventually moving to the top of our game. That's
Mhm.
way beyond. And I've seen this in businesses. I've seen this in people in school. I've seen this
Mhm.
people applying their lives. When it's like the underdog. I guess when you're slated the underdog, you're playing harder and you do more things to make it come true, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And so and now you get to this point for this to take what you've learned from the welding, what you learned from the art, right? And so now you decide, let's see what we can do with this welding guild. You do
Mhm.
into the nonprofit. How has that went for you since you started it?
Um, so, it's kind of funny because I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. Um, and like some days I'm like, it feels like such a foreign word to describe myself, but I guess essentially I am. And
Of course.
so being a woman and a woman of color, I don't personally see a lot of other women out there getting like acknowledgement or support. And so for me, I never was able to lean on a mentor. I never had a strong female role model growing up. And so for me, it's just like, well, how do I do all this um, when I feel very alone? And so then I kept having to go around and I basically put myself out there and would ask people questions. And so as I'm trying to maneuver in the nonprofit world and also just even in the welding industry, manufacturing world, I had to sit in rooms or basically I had to create a spot for myself at tables. And then I think once people started seeing that, I wasn't going to go away, like that I was serious about learning and serious about trying to figure out how to, make this work. People have been more welcoming and accepting of me being in that room. Like welding and manufacturing is a very white male dominated field. There are so many I don't want to say problems, but there are definitely a lot of barriers for diverse, people who are trying to get into the industry. And so, it's definitely been a lot of learning, a lot of questions asked. I think I learned a long time ago. It's okay to hear no. If I hear no, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to the next person, or I'm going on to the next thing. I'm not going to let somebody prevent me from reaching my goal. And that was definitely something that was a very quickly learned lesson. Um, and asking for help has also been like, I think when I first started, it was kind of hard for me to ask for help because I'm like, I don't even know what I need help with. So what do I ask? And then, I just kept having more conversations and yeah, I mean, it's definitely been like a really rewarding experience, especially now that I've hit 5 years of doing this, running the nonprofit. I've also been in the welding industry for 9 years, so I feel like that that amount of time under my belt um, is kind of giving me more legitimacy to other people, even though it's like, to me, I'm like, well, why do I have to keep justifying what I'm doing and why it's right, and all of that? But you still have to you still have to do that sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah, and sometimes to ourselves, right? We have
Yeah.
to prove it to ourselves that hey, we can do that. Now you said that to get yourself at that table, you had to kind of make a place. It reminds me of something ancient text says. It says your gifts will make room for you, which
Mhm.
obviously it has, and that was acknowledged from what I'm seeing here by the Indiana Commission for Women as a 2022 Trailblazer Award winner.
Mhm.
Now that is absolutely fantastic.
Mhm.
Um, that is something I think should be celebrated. Which when I saw that, I was like, man, that's absolutely fantastic that you were able to do that. And so,
Mhm.
how did that feel when you got when you got that notification or that message came across?
So it definitely it was definitely a great surprise. Um, but then when I went to the ceremony, award ceremony, and I saw all the other women that had gotten received other awards for being a trailblazer in a maybe a different area, a different focus in the community, I was like, oh my God, like this was very intimidating. Like it was a lot of women who were, doing governmental work, who might have been in healthcare, and they were running, huge organizations and were had all sorts of different projects under their belts. And I was like, my gosh, it's pretty amazing that all of these women did all of these big things in the community. And so it definitely was kind of a surreal thing because I'm like, I don't know if I should be here. But that's kind of the also the struggle is that imposter syndrome is definitely real. There I still have moments where I'm like, I don't know if what I'm doing makes sense or if I'm the right person to be doing this. But then I'm like, well, I'm doing my best and I love it. I don't always think of it as work. And even receiving that kind of award, it to me it was still like, well, I appreciate the acknowledgement, but I mean, this is just something that I do. Something that I love doing. So,
But once again, you were acknowledged for that, and
mhm.
around it sounds like some other wonderful people that were doing wonderful things. And you know, I get it. I get it totally. You're like, but I didn't do everything that I wanted to do at the time.
Yeah,
I don't feel like I'm there yet, quite yet. You know,
yeah.
and
Mhm.
so apologize for the clock in the background chiming
Oh, it's okay.
to our audience and yourself. But it's still wonderful. And I saw that. I thought that was fantastic. And I've seen some of your artwork. Now
Mhm.
you did this. What would you call it? You did it. It was a I don't even know how to describe it, but it was showing more of the Guatemala stuff. What's down there? You had this,
Mhm.
almost like a what would you call that? You welded it. Um,
So I mean, I've done basically everything that I've ever designed has some sort of element or influence of Guatemalan textiles. So, I mean, I've done some large pieces where they're more arbors. So, I love the idea of designing larger structures that kind of encourage people to be outside, but also my big grandioso idea or my hope was that I could do a furniture takeover for a block of restaurants where I could look at their patios and redo all of their seating, with the thought of them being able to grow ingredients that they use in their restaurants. And so there was a piece that I did for a local restaurant, um, and the owner, he's super super nice. He's such a great guy, and so I was able to do a custom piece for him where it was an entryway for his restaurant. So it helped people see where the front door was because it was a little bit confusing. But also, it was made so he could start growing like hibiscuses and or like other peppers or things that he used in his restaurant. And so it was just I loved that because he was, I think, one of the very few people that actually took that initiative to start growing their own ingredients on the piece. So,
yeah, well, I think it's wonderful what you've done with all that, and then the guild's going well, from what I understand as well.
yeah. So when I launched the Latinas Welding Guild in 2017, I wasn't exactly quite sure all the things that I wanted to do. I was like, maybe we'll just focus on basic welding classes, just like an intro, nothing to do with certification. Just try to figure out, well, I was also like, well, I don't know personally if I feel like certification is all that important because there's a lot of other stuff behind that process. But then over the next couple of years, then I decided, and was after we finally got some funding to support it, that certification was actually I think it was an important thing for students to go through. Um, whether they want to join the workforce or not, it was more of a personal goal. So, um, like basically when students come to class, we're preparing them for certification testing. And so, they're already really nervous about taking the test. But when they get there and they pass, like the amount of confidence and emotional relief and I think it's just, it really is all about the confidence, I think, for them. Um, because, to them now they have a physical piece of paper that no one can take away from them or discredit them for passing that test. So they can, it'll help them get their foot in the door if they want to go get a job. But either way, it is validating that, they put in the work and that they deserve to be there. So,
Well, I love it. I love what you're doing. I love all the different things that you've done and where you've come from. I love the story. That's the thing that I find interesting about people is their story, and not only the story, but their lessons that they've learned
mhm.
along the way. What's one or two lessons you could share with our audience that you learned in your journey up to this point?
Ooh, one lesson. I definitely think, you know, being okay to challenge yourself. I know that that is really hard. Um, I didn't know anything about nonprofit world. I didn't know anything about business or how to start a business. And, I think that giving up is always the easy way out. So I definitely think challenging yourself will definitely um, I think everybody should at least try to do that. It's not like I don't think it's okay to be complacent or get too comfortable. Like if you're not challenging yourself, you're not learning. So,
I like that. Be willing to challenge yourself, and
mhm.
that's the for you and others around you. Correct?
Yeah. Well, and also just even learning how to, give yourself some grace or like forgive yourself a little bit. I know that I've been guilty of beating myself up when maybe I don't accomplish things as quickly as I wish I did. Um, but the more and more students that, I'm able to help and see and just see them even just within their journey, I do, I know it like sometimes they beat themselves up about not either doing something well. And I'm like, it just, you have to just stop putting so much pressure on yourself or you're never going to be happy. Like you are trying, you're doing more than what other people are doing. And that's what you should acknowledge. So just, pat yourself on the back.
Say well done, and then just keep on going. Sometimes you're your own cheerleader, and you may
Yeah.
be the only one around, and that's okay.
Yeah.
For a time,
Yeah.
you'll eventually get other people to cheer you on. I saw something the other day where the post was, as you're on the journey, you're by yourself, but once you make it,
Hmm.
everybody wants to come around you. They didn't see everything
Yeah.
else. I liked what John C. Maxwell said. He said, somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm going to be like you one day, right?" And he said, "I just wish they could have seen where I started." And that's
Yeah.
the thing that I wish people could have seen where we've started, and see the backstory of what we've all done and been through and survived and thrived over. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I know sometimes it's really easy for people to just see the good or just want to see the good, but like, there are like hurdles and barriers and I mean there are a lot of stuff that are behind the scenes that people don't necessarily always know. Um and so, sometimes it's like, well, I'm always willing to share experiences that I've had in the industry and that what I see all the time. So that's also something that people just can't be afraid to hear the bad either. So
yeah, the bad, the storms in life help grow the flowers.
yeah,
People love the
exactly.
flowers and they love the fruits, they love the vegetables, but a lot of times they don't like the storms and the things that
Yeah.
happen. But it really helps us to grow individually. There's challenges we may be getting into a place in a field. I mean, I look at it in this way, somebody with renal disease generally don't start a business. I mean, they're out there. That's not as
Hmm.
relevant. And so when you come into this realm, this business world, and you've got this, even though I'm transplanted, you still got this thing. You got challenges to overcome.
Hmm. Exactly.
So question: have you been back down to Guatemala?
Not since I was in high school, unfortunately. Yeah, my hope is that, I can make the trip down soon. Um, However, I don't know if I told you this when I saw you, but I actually was reconnected with my biological family in 2019. So right before the pandemic, I was able to visit with some of my family members that may or may not be in the States. And it was just a random surprise, and the crazy thing is that when I was in high school, when we went down to visit, I had put together a photo album, so I could show them pictures of what I looked like growing up, all the way up until I had gotten down there. And so one of the photos that I had put in the photo album, um, I think it had something like Poland family reunion. And so in 2019, I randomly got a Facebook message from somebody, and I'm like, I don't know who this person is. So I ignored it. And then he ended up contacting my sister, my adopted sister here. And so then she called me and she's like, Coney's, one of your brothers is trying to get a hold of you. I was like, what? Because basically since high school, I was like, I just accepted the fact that I'd probably never talk to them again, because I'm like, I don't know their names. I don't know how to find them. They're in Guatemala. I don't think they have a computer or access to Facebook or any other social media. So I basically kind of accepted that I'd probably never see them. And so she was just like, yeah, no, he's been looking for you. And I was like, what? And then I read the message, and he had been looking for me for over 5 years. And they were even looking at trying to get a PI to come find me. But then the PI wanted like $10,000, and they're like, we can't pay that. Um, so basically one of my younger brothers was looking all through Facebook, looking up my name, and then I think finally had found that photo in the photo album and had put two and two together or something, and ended up finding me. And like, it's just such a surreal way of being found and reconnected and everything.
That is, it's very surreal and very awesome. I haven't had that opportunity just yet.
Hmm.
I know I've done some of those testing out there and found I do have some family, but
Hmm.
it's definitely something for me. The feeling is definitely want to meet them. You've already been there to a certain extent, um,
Hmm.
but also, what do they think about where you're at now?
um so I think that I'm definitely still the black sheep, um because I am pretty sure I'm like maybe the only woman in my family, who is of birthing age, who doesn't have children. And so when I got reconnected with my family, they made a trip to come visit, and I went to go visit them and everything. And so I know that the question of like, when am I having kids came up, and I'm like, I don't know, whenever I feel like it, I guess at this point. And so and so then even trying to explain to them what I'm doing, I don't know if it's still quite clear that they know what I'm doing with my nonprofit and things like that. But I mean, it's definitely been a different type of journey. Uh, Basically, I grew up without them, and all of a sudden reconnected. So they're still strangers, but it's like just this kind of weird, having to learn how to navigate with family who you don't really know that well. And yeah, and it's just kind of an emotional roller coaster. I mean, it's certainly gotten easier now, but when I first got reconnected, it was just like a roller coaster for sure.
Hmm. Well, I mean, it's. I guess I could see that, but it's to each in its own. That's the thing. You've done wonderful things here, and I think if anything, the family should be proud of what you've done, even though they may
Hmm.
not understand it. And to be able to
Yeah.
build this life for yourself and to be able to go better yourself and better in the lives of others through that welding to go to give them an opportunity to go pursue their passion and their dream and their purpose to fulfill that, and
Hmm.
that way they can come. They can fulfill what they're supposed to do in life.
Hmm.
So, if anything, you should be proud. I'm proud of what you've done. I'm proud of where you've come from, and all that. So I think that's once again, it's just something that I think is definitely something to be definitely a story that is being told. in one of the places here on this live stream, but also something that I think you know should be shared with the world.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Yeah.
So the way we connected was through I'm gonna get this messed up if I ain't careful. AWGR, adoptees with Guatemala roots.
Hmm.
I think that's right. If I'm wrong,
Yeah.
oops. I did that one time and called them Guati roots, and Ben kind of got after me.
Yeah.
Ben's like, we're not Guati roots. Change that.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh boy, I messed that one up. But how did you get connected with that group?
So I believe I was on a um I was a guest on another like a kind of a podcast show. And so Ben actually reached out to me via LinkedIn. I think was making he was basically like, "Oh, I just heard your um like the event or the conversation you had on this one show, and saw that you were adopted and I am too, and like I'm running this uh adoptees with Guatemalan roots organization." And so I was like, "What? That's cool." Because like I mean, I knew that there were some groups out there, but I personally stopped pursuing them. Actually, I've never pursued any sort of adoptee groups, just because it was always such a weird thing for me to be forced as a child to go to adopted like meetups and stuff. Um, and so I was really interested though, because I was like, the more he was telling me about what the organization was trying to do, I was like, oh my God, that's like exactly what I want to do. I want to make an impact in the country, do something for the economy or make an impact in some sort of way. And so yeah, I don't know. We FaceTimed actually when my husband and I were on vacation in Mexico, and I was just like so excited. I was like, I don't care if we're on vacation. I'm like, I have to do this video call with him. So I'm like, I need to learn more. I'm so excited. And so yeah, so that's basically how I got connected to the group. And then I think when I met you back, I think it was this year. I don't know. Time has been flying. But when I went to DC for that last meetup, that was my first time going to an event and like meeting other people from across the country. So
Yeah. Now for me, that was a little weird because I'm used to my normality with the adopt my parents and things up here. So it was a little different when I walked in that room. I'm like, I felt out of place. I'm like, man,
yeah, me
I'm
too.
like, I'm like, just isn't that interesting though, right? It
Hmm.
seems like throughout our life, we kind of get used to where we're at and all that. We kind of get used to all that, and then we get in a room there's these adoptees that are all from Guatemala, and we're looking around. I felt I felt out of place. I was like, I'm looking around. I'm looking at Ben's the only one I know there. I think we knew you were coming, and I didn't know anybody else. They're doing all this wonderful things, and I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah, yeah. My social anxiety definitely kicked in during the event. So
Uh, which after that, we got to go out to eat and all that. I don't know if I think you may have went out to eat,
mhm.
but um, I thought that was interesting. Of course, I got picked on because I don't like avocados, and then they were picking on me and say, "Well, you must not be from Guatemala." I was like, "Hey, look, I'm the same. I just don't like avocados. It makes me sick." So they
Yeah.
gave me a hard time, which is it's all in good fun. It was fun, and then you were able to bring your story, not only your story, but what you were doing before the
Hmm.
group. And I think that's the amazing thing about what this group does is they're able to bring out what everybody's doing in a positive way.
Hmm.
You've got with this the welding guild and things. So I think that was just absolutely fantastic as well.
Yeah, it was definitely some of the stories were very kind of hard to hear. Um, but it definitely did give me some perspective. I'm like I do feel very fortunate to have been able to have met my family, and at least been able to kind of go through that experience, that chapter earlier on, and now now I'm experiencing a different phase. Once again, like another chapter that I never imagined being a possibility. So yeah, it's still very like I still can't believe that I've been able to do both. So
Yeah. I get that. I get that. And like I
mhm,
said, it's with all that stuff that's going on, your story, all this is just wonderful stuff.
mhm,
Now, when you go after I want to kind of come back a little bit, take a step back because I'm interested about the art. You know, you
mhm,
said you started out drawing. Now I draw, but the time I drew was when I was in dialysis, sitting there for
mhm.
4 hours. That's all I drew, cartoon characters. I just find a picture on the internet and start not tracing it, but just kind of copying it, just a way to keep my mind going. So when you got into it, you took the drawing, you got to where you're at now. You're doing the welding with the art. I've seen some of the pieces. We've seen some of the art done in Guatemala. Is it, with all that? I know there's Mayans down there, quite relevant, quite prevalent. I mean, I know from what I understand, I'm got some Mayan in me. Is that incorporated in your art as well?
Yeah, that was something, and like I definitely identify as Mayan. Like growing up, I like would always build Mayan ruins out of my Legos. I constantly was like, and my parents were like, where did how she know to build that or something? So it was just like I was constantly looking for ways to connect. And with art, it's always evolved. Like I think before I went to Guatemala, it was just like, oh, I could see stuff in a book and like basically reference that in some of my artwork. But then once I went down to Guatemala and I saw the amount of poverty that a lot of people were living in, and then after I got to meet my biological family and kind of get a better understanding that, I am the only woman who has an education, um, it made me feel so much more thankful, because I'm like, if I wouldn't have been put up for adoption, I probably wouldn't have lived, just because I was so extremely malnutritioned and starving to death that I don't think I would have survived in that environment to go on. And so a lot of the stuff that I like to incorporate um, I like to have some sort of social or economic focus when I do things. But unfortunately, just with running the nonprofit, I haven't been able to spend a lot of time doing either painting or drawing or anything like that. All of my work that I do now is basically 3D, which I do feel really fortunate because even though I might not be able to do more of like the social or economic focus pieces, I still get to design. And I absolutely love that. Like that keeps me going. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I know I can like sit down and like design this table or design this chair or whatever I'm designing at the time. Um, and so, I do feel fortunate that we have clients that know the type of work that I do, and that's why they're hiring us, or that's why they're contacting us because either I've done something for somebody else, and they just give me that creative freedom, like which I think is always half the battle. You don't always have clients that are like, yes, you just do your thing and let us know when we can see how much it's going to be. So
Well, I think that is interesting, and Mayan art is interesting as well. I've seen some of the stuff. Um, of course, a lot of times I start doodling stuff when I'm on the phone. Just randomly doodling, and I look at it, I was like, "What in the world is that thing?" And then I start picking out eyes and all this stuff. It's interesting how that all kind of incorporates. In my I was a blue collar in the blue collar industry for a long time, so I did plumbing, houses, mason work, and I loved the mason work. And when you talk about mason work, my thought goes back to those Mayan temples over there. Now
yeah.
they didn't have all the tools and the nice stuff that we have today, but I always go back to that when I was laying the block, laying the brick, laying the rock once I got into that, and just something I
Hmm.
really enjoyed. And I love seeing those ruins down there, the temples and all that stuff in there, and then to find out the history about what's
Hmm.
behind it and trying to research. I know for me, I get this homesickness. I want to call it homesickness, and I'll call it that, to go back because I still have yet to go down. I
Hmm.
still have yet to go down, but hopefully in the near future I will be able to, so I can kind
Hmm.
of see how it is. And I know And like you said, had I not been adopted uh, when I know for me, I would have been on the streets, more than likely passed away at age 18 because I had a stroke. And then
Yeah.
if that wouldn't have took me out, well, my kidney would have took me out completely. They'd have just found me just passed out there, and it becomes very real when I think about it. That had I not been brought, and we must have been brought here for a purpose. That's
Yeah.
what I look at. We those of us that have been brought here. I know there's negative sides to some people's story. There's positive sides, but
Hmm.
when the push comes to shove, we were brought here for a reason. It's up to us to unlock that reason so we can go make the world a better place. Maybe we can go back down and make a major impact down in Guatemala.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to make an impact where we're at in our local neighborhoods, in our local communities. We just don't know. The thing is, we were brought here for a reason. It's up to us to find it out.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think I struggled with um, my adoption for a lot of for many, many years, and different layers of maybe some trauma and some other things that I had to work through. But it's like looking back on it now, like all I can do is make the most of the opportunity that I was given. And I even if it's a very small impact, I that just is what I feel like. I love working. I'm not afraid to put in the time and the energy, the sweat and tears and all of that into making something work. So I'm just happy that I have a platform that I'm able to make some sort of impact, even if it's just for one person.
That's all it is. What goes back to that story with that individual was it the elderly man and the grandson walking down the beach, and he threw the starfish back in. He says it didn't make any difference. He goes, but it did to that starfish.
Yeah, yeah.
It yeah.
Well, and it's personally, like, I mean, I just don't hear about other um, you know, Guatemalans who are in leadership. Like
Mhm.
I never really do. And so that's what I thought was pretty amazing when um, Ben was talking about all the efforts that are going on in Guatemala right now. I'm like, that's amazing. Like the fact that there's all these adoptees in like in the group that want, like, we all have a common interest of make like basically making the country and the world a better place. um but we just never have that representation. So, and honestly, like, I feel like a lot of people don't even know well, they don't know where Guatemala is. They always think it's in Mexico. So I'm like, you know what, I'm proud to be Guatemalan. I'm if I'm the only Guatemalan someone knows, I'm like, that's awesome, because now you'll remember me. So
That cracks me up. Yeah, some people do think it's in Mexico.
yeah.
But start digging into our food. Start digging into our food. You realize very quickly we're different.
Yes.
Start digging into our history. You realize we're different. Uh,
Yeah.
that does has happened a time or two, and
Yeah.
I politely remind them I'm Guatemala.
Yeah. Exactly. Different
But
country.
it's a little different. We're a little, we're all different, But what would be, I think, would be fascinating is with those in that group that would be willing, and to anybody out there that's listening, whether they're live or whether you're doing the hashtag replay. If you're an adoptee and you're from Guatemala, or you're in the adopted with Guatemalan roots, reach out to either one of us. I would say let's look at setting up a speaking tour.
Hmm.
Why not do a speaking tour? I mean, we could share stories that, I don't know. Let's go for the moon, right? Let's hit all the states. let's
Yeah,
get for
exactly.
let's get it doesn't have to be all. Now I probably talked myself into a project bigger than because we
Yeah.
we could we could do that. And that's the funny thing too. There are some Guatemala people that are in the speaking industry. I
Hmm.
don't know if you've heard of him, but Ovi Vascalera. He came from Guatemala. He is a motivational speaker, friend of
Hmm.
mine, and he helps people in the Latino community as well, and starts people talking to people in school. And
Hmm.
but I think that would be fantastic. Go out, share our story, share the lessons, what we've learned, and bring it. We could even start it virtually. We could do a 1 day thing to virtually uh, bring it out and say, hey, let's see what happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that definitely, I think that could have such a great impact. The some of the work that we're doing right now and we're trying to do for next year, we're trying to get more involved with like youth programming and all of that. And so, um, for younger kids to see someone who looks like them doing something, making an impact. I think that's really important when we don't always get that, especially as the Latino community. I don't feel like we always are given the opportunity to be heard. And so, I do think that's something that, is definitely important.
Hmm. I think we could do it too. Now we just have to talk Ben into it.
Right?
Talk to Ben and Lizzie and all the other ones. I'll tell you
Mhm.
one thing. I'll host it on our platform. We had at my last the conference we had, the business conference that we had just recently, which I'm still using my business conference background here. We had
Mhm.
over 1,000 attendees
That's awesome. Yeah.
just in that. So I think we partner up and do the Latino Guild, what you're doing. A couple of the companies that are within that. I don't know, Ben and I've talked about a lot, and I'm probably gonna get myself in trouble. But if we do it as one big, I know we got the meeting coming up, but do it sometime at the end of next year. And you know what? Oh no, now I'm getting an idea. We could do it during this month because it's adoptee
Mhm.
month.
It's the best time. So yeah, so we have the end of the month coming up here shortly. So
Yeah, so we could plan it. We could start planning it now because
yeah,
I think by that time, I'd like to pop 5,000 to 10,000 people
yeah.
attendees, and we could do it worldwide. I mean, there have been people that's been in Guatemala that has watched this show. I've
Hmm.
seen it. There's people that's been in Ireland and all over the world. This show doesn't just stay here in the States. It's all
Hmm.
over. So you never know where they're listening from.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're coming down to the end of this show. Is there anything that you would like to share with our audience?
Um, I don't think so. I mean, I feel like we covered a very wide range of of things. So
Okay. 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 Here's one. I got one question for you. What's your
yeah.
favorite food from Guatemala?
Mm, so I got this cookbook, and it's basically like green banana patties. So like you basically take a green banana, you mash them up, and you in your hands basically mash them almost like you are with a hamburger bun. And then you are cooking like tomato sauce, and you basically just they're called green banana dumplings. That's what they're called. But they have like little green peppers on them and stuff like that. They're really good. I like those.
Hmm. Interesting. Now I'm gonna
Yeah,
have to go to back to my Guatemalan cookbook and see what I can muster up. Of course, I end up starting to I end up starting to work with the recipe, and next thing I know, I throw some southern things in there. The things that
yeah,
probably shouldn't be in there. I start doing southern cooking, and
yeah,
before you know it, it's this southern Guatemala that never probably was supposed to come to light.
yeah, yeah. There's also a really good cold steak salad too, which is really good. I've made quite a few things from there, like stews and things like that. But I'm like, I still have to get back to it and get more recipes under my belt. So
Understand that. All right, so I'm gonna put you in the back room, in the green room, if you want to just hang out back there for a few minutes, and I'll go finish up the show. Okay.
okay, sounds good.
Thanks for showing up. We appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is the conclusion of our show here today on the Kidney Trail Talk Show. I appreciate it. I had a very interesting conversation. Loved every minute of it. Look, I hope you will support us. Go to our YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. It's the KT Broadcasting Network on YouTube. So hit the subscribe, hit the alarm bell, and then you can follow Kidney Trails on LinkedIn and on Facebook and all the other places that you would see in social media. We're out there. I have my media and marketing manager taking care of all that. So just follow us, like, comment, and until next time, I'll tell you next month we have right now 2 shows, could possibly be a third one. We will see. Really looking forward to that. So until next time, y'all have a great, great night.